Mille Fiori is a competitive game by Rainer Knizia. It is about making glass goods in Venice in the Renaissance, and also not really. The game is pretty abstract, and that's okay. One can have games that are driven mainly by the mechanics, and actually the fact that there is a loosely connected theme is not a bad thing either, because at least it gives us the excuse to have this really nice looking colorful board. I really like the look of it. And also, the glass theme gives us the excuse of using the tiles made of transparent plastic. They represent the different glass elements you're creating. And of course, as the game progresses, they're placed on the board, which makes the board look even prettier when a lot of these tiles are out there. And also, on top of looking good, these glass tiles are important because they still allow you to see the icons on which the tile is placed, which is important for game purposes. The game, mechanically speaking, is a card drafting game of the Pick and Pass Sushi Go 7 Wonders Persuasion. We have a deck of cards, and players are assigned a hand of cards. You will select a card, then you will play your card, and then you pass the other cards to the next player. The remaining cards, you take the cards from the next player, you select another card to perform an action, and so on and so forth. You have hands of 5 cards each round, and with 3 or 4 players, 4 of these cards are used, and 1 is placed in a general supply next to the board. With 2 players, you only use 3 of the 5 cards of the starting hand, and the remaining 2 go to the supply. The supply is important because there are game effects that will allow you to get extra cards, and when that is the case, well, you take the extra card from the supply. The card, simply put, will have symbols indicating the area and often the specific place in which you will get to place your tile. The general idea is always that a card lets you place one of your tiles on the board, and that will trigger bonuses and effects. This one, for example, will allow the player who plays it to place a tile in a space looking like that. So not just the area, which is the yellow area, but also that specific item which represents a pigment. So could be there, could be there, could be there. Different areas will work in different ways. A card indicating this area, for example, says a single line of spaces, then you had to place it in the first available space sequentially that way. So we got different areas, they work in different ways, and will allow you to score points as the game progresses. The game continues until somebody has placed all of their tiles, or until the deck of cards has run out. At the point, the player with the highest score wins the game. Yes, there is no final scoring, which is almost unusual these days. It's so common to have a little bit of a plot twist, maybe, people revealing secret objectives, or in any case, calculating little things that people were not keeping track of to get a little bit of a surprise maybe at the end, but this is not the case. If somebody's ahead by the time the players stop taking actions, the player remains ahead, and they win the game. So, the cards will let you place things in different locations, and so we're just going to go by locations so I can tell you what they do. Now, we have this area here, and when you place a tile, you score a point for itself. So, well, I just place a tile there. That's 1. Hooray! And for each connected space of your own color. So right there, if I place that tile right now, that scores me 3 points. If I place a tile on the pigments, then actually that group that I just added to is worth 2 points per space. So that would be a nice 8 points. Don't mind if I collect them. Also, if by placing a tile, I encircle one of those symbols entirely, as I just did there, then I get an extra card. You remember, an extra card from the supply here. tiles placed in this area, as I said, are placed sequentially. They will immediately score the player. Oh, actually, back to here, since it's still here. Back to here. If I collect all 4, or if I covered all 4 symbols in this area, I get to place a tile of mine on the highest available score space. So that's an amazing 20 points. If later another person collects, or I should say covers all 4 of those spaces, they get 15 points and so on and so forth. As you can see, each area of the board has a similar thing, which is a race to the best spots. But back here you collect, you have to place them sequentially, and you collect the number of points on the space that you covered, plus all those connected to it of your own color. So right now somebody should really stop yellow from spamming this area, because by placing that tile there, they just score 3 and 4 and 2 points, which is pretty neat. And that's probably somebody will want to go there. And they also score a 5, which is not so bad. Also, if somebody covers 3 different numbers in that area, they get a free card. If somebody covers 4 different numbers, that's when they get again the priority space here. And actually, somebody covers 5 different numbers, they get an extra card as well. Then we have this area here. It's 2 areas and they work exactly the same. They just have different symbols. And these are where you place the citizens, I think that's. But there are 2 kinds, like the nobles and the common people. Here, it's an area where you do not have to match the symbol exactly. So, for example, if I have this card here, it means that I need to place my tile in this area, but I do not have to place it on the griffin exactly. I could place it on another symbol, as long as it's like a social pyramid, and so we're building it going up, as long as the tile that I just placed is resting on some other tiles, like so. So you're not mandated to match the symbol, but if you do, you double the points. And the points are getting better and better as you go high on the social hierarchy, higher on the pyramid. And here the card reminds you that the ones at the bottom are worth 1 point, the one in the second tier are worth 3, and the ones on top 6. Also, if you add the tile that completes a pyramid, or I should say that adds the piece that touches that symbol, then the player scores, gets an extra card, and then the first player to cover all 3 symbols gets again the best spot, and then other players will get lower spots. And again, we have this other area here which works exactly the same. Also, when you create a pyramid, the people under you also get to score, which is, pretty nice. Now, there's other area where I guess the idea is that we're mixing the components up here, and then the people are doing stuff, and now we're making the glass goods. So when you play a corresponding card, you place a tile on one of the corresponding spaces. There are advantages in trying to complete many of the same kind and specializing that way, because when you add a tile, then the points of you and anybody who has been producing that, so anybody who has tokens there, will get to score a number of points equal to how many there are there. So basically right now, each of these is worth 3 points, so 9 points for purple. By placing a token here, now each of these is worth 4 points, so green is scoring 4 points, and purple is scoring 12. But wait, there is a plot twist. Here's a reminder that if by placing a tile here, you give more points to other players than you actually score, as a reward you get a card from the supply, because it's nice to be nice. So there's a reward in specializing, but there's also a reward in covering all four icons, all 4 goods, because again, that's how we get those points that way when you cover all 4 icons. Then we have this area here, which is related to the come on, ships. You're supposed to be standing. There you go. Which is also connected to this track here, and each player has a ship that will move this way. Now, as you may have noticed, every other area that I mentioned, when you put down a tile, you immediately score some points. So this is the exception. When you place them here, you don't necessarily score points. And then I place that one tile there, then somebody keeps building stuff there. When you play a card to this area with those symbols, again, first you will get to place a tile there. Then you also get to move your ship by a number of spaces on the track indicated on the card. So this one will move my ship by just one. And you collect the reward of the space in which you land, ignoring the ones that you may have jumped over. So that is just one measly point, sadly. Other cards will move you more. This one will move me 5, on top of letting me place a tile there. And then I just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and collect 10 points, which is a lot more exciting, isn't it? You can also choose, if you really want to advance on that track, you can choose to play any card, ignoring anything else, and simply moving your ship by the number indicated there. And in this case, you don't get to place a tile there, you just move the ship. And again, but if you play the appropriate card to this area, you place a tile and you move the ship. These tiles that you place here score only when the entire line is filled, in which case each token that is placed there will score points to the owning player. So in this case, red and yellow are scoring points based on how many tiles are there, and that also changes the value. So that means that the more tiles are there, the more points is going to be worth, and again, red here is going to score more than yellow. But as you can see, there are many ways in which you score points yourself and you give points to other people, which may happen here, which may happen here, which may happen when you complete a pyramid, and therefore there are also other people under the pyramid that will get to score, and so on and so forth. So this is how the areas work. You continue to play like this, drafting cards, performing actions that will result in you placing tiles on the board. Continue like this until the end of the game. Player with the highest score wins the game. Mille Fiori is a fun, light, incredibly good-looking game. It has to be one of the prettiest games that I've seen in a while, especially as you play it, and different patterns of colors get splashed on the board, and it's just very, very nice. And I like the combination between the card-driven gameplay and the different things that you have to do on the board. Sure, it can feel a bit swingy. There are windows of opportunity that are really narrow and really good and allow you to grab 20 points right there, unless the other players realize that you really shouldn't have that one card. And sure, if it's the one that you get in your hand at the beginning of the round, no one can do anything about it, but after a while, chances are that people really will not want you to have those pigments or that card for that area. So there's that element of indirect interaction that's really nice, that's really interesting. But again, it can feel a little bit swingy because of those 20 point bonuses that you get. On the plus side, everybody should get some of those, and if you score one of those bonuses second, then you get 15. So ultimately, the relative difference is only 5. Of course, with your more players, then the difference between 5 and 20 is pretty big. Matter of fact, at the point, you're probably better off trying to get a bonus that still would give 20 or 15 rather than to go for an area where the only bonus remaining is a 5 points. It's nice to have extra cards because on one hand, it's like extra turns, which somehow is kind of the same as everybody else is skipping a turn. And we know skipping turns is a big no-no these days, which I agree with. But then these turns are so quick that if a player takes an extra turn, even 2 sometimes, if they chain off, it's totally possible. It doesn't disrupt the flow of the game in any significant way. Now, there is something that I have a little bit of, a little bit unsure about. is the fact that when you're scoring those extra points in the 20, 15, 10, and 5 areas, you're using the same tiles that you're using to perform other actions. That means it reduces the actions that are left for you and also that are left in the game. That shortens the game. So that feels like it's a little bit of a positive feedback loop. If you don't know, this technical term is the opposite of rubber banding, which means when you gain a lot of points, you're also shortening the game, giving other players fewer chances of catching up to you. But again, hopefully many people will be getting those bonuses, so more or less everybody will be doing something similar. However, it's possible for a player to get a lot of extra actions, and again, that scores them points, that uses up their tiles and reduces the chances of the other players to catch up to them. What I'm trying to say is don't let one player get a lot of extra actions. It's something I would say that is not a deal breaker, but you need to be aware because it can become a dominant strategy. Unless everybody's aware of it, then everybody's trying to prevent it. The game doesn't scale perfectly. I think that you really need 3 or 4 players for every area of the board to matter, to be interesting, for the interactions to be exciting, for those windows of opportunities to be spread among multiple players. With 2 players, which I tried, some areas of the board are just not as interesting because you don't have a lot of players creating a lot of loads for the ships to carry and score a lot of points, building up to those pyramids. But there are areas that are always good, even with 2 players, such as the area where you are covering those components. That always gives you a ton of points. So that is going to get a lot of attention. The string of areas, that also is going to get a lot of attention. So with 2 players, simply the board is not as equally interesting. And so because of that, gameplay becomes less varied. There are also fewer chances of catching up to your opponent because, again, you can say, hey, we need to gang up against this or that player, otherwise they'll get a ton of extra actions. On the other hand, you can strategize a little bit more because, well, I'm giving my opponent these 2 cards. In the hand I'm giving to my opponent, I know there are those 2 cards and I know one of them is coming back to me. So there's that plus element. Also, with 2 players, the game lasts like half an hour or less. So it's not that big of a deal if one becomes a little bit of a runaway leader. In general, what we have here is a light, fun, incredibly pretty game. It's easy to teach, it's very light to play. Also, something not nothing these days, it sets up so quickly. You take out the board, you shuffle the cards, you give each player tiles of 1 color, and the game is set up. It sets up in less than 5 minutes. You put it away easily, which makes it for a perfect second game of the night. Maybe not necessarily the biggest, the main course of your game night, but definitely a light, fun, entertaining game. And I personally enjoyed it.